listening to us.
Is it on?
He'll be on in a second.
Morning. Can we start Beshalach? Vayi Beshalach Paro Sa'om. And when Paro sent out the people, V'lo nochen alukim derech eretz plishtim, Yikorafu. He did not lead us along the Philistine route because it was close. Komer alukim, pen yinochim on berosim l'cham v'shov mitzroyim. Because the people, if they'll be confronted, they will see war, they will return to Egypt. So I always mention the famous Beis HaLevi. There's a midrash, the midrash right on the posuk, Vahi b'shalach paro sa'om. The word vai in Hebrew always means woe. Woe that I had to send out the people after 10 plagues. Meaning, if we would have been there longer, Hashem would have brought more plagues upon the Egyptians. But because he had to send us out at this point, he wasn't able to give more plagues to the Egyptians to punish them to a greater degree. So woe to me that I had to send them out at this point. Because if I could have, I would have given them more plagues, more makos. So the Beis HaLevi asks, David Bell says, V'rachma v'kol Hashem's mercies on all his creations. What do you mean? God just wants to punish them. Woe to me, I wish I could have given them more punishment. I mean, Hashem has multiple ways to punish people. But in this particular context, woe to me, I couldn't give them more plagues, because if I could have, I would have. Meaning, as it says, we had to leave at that moment. Why did we have to leave at that moment? Because we were holding at the brink of spiritual extinction. And if we would have stayed longer, we would have gone into the oblivion at a point of no return. So therefore, he had to send us out at that point. That point happened to have been after 10 plagues. So Hashem says, woe to me. So woe to me that I couldn't keep them longer to give them more plagues. So he explains, and really the Or Chaim HaKodesh says this at the beginning of Va'ero. It says, Vayadaber Elokim El Moshe Ani Hashem. If you remember, Moshe had said, why are you being so harsh with the Jews? Why did you send me? Hashem said, Ani Hashem. So he said that for the Egyptians, there's one approach that Or Chaim HaKodesh explains over there. Regarding the Egyptians, Ani Elokim. Regarding Klal Yisrael, Ani Hashem. Meaning every plague had two sides to it. It had a dual function. On one hand, the Egyptians were being punished. On the other hand, every plague that came upon the Egyptians was supernatural. We saw clearly the hand of Hashem. So as a result of that, every plague we were exposed to, it actually purged us to a degree of our idolatrous beliefs. Because each plague demonstrated God's mastership and control over a certain aspect of existence. That God's not a deity, but rather God is the Almighty. He's the all-controlling. And all these powers only are manifestations of his will. That's Ani Hashem. Elokim is what? That's punishment for the Egyptians. But in terms of the Jews, it's Rachmim, because for them, every level of exposure, it's in their best interest. Besides seeing their masters being punished for what they did. Vaisha Sholach. Woe to me, I had to send them out after 10 plagues. Because factually, we were not fully purged. He had to send us out then, because we would have gone into spiritual oblivion. We had to be sent out then. But because we weren't sent out then, we weren't fully purged, ultimately it led to the Chet Egel. That the only reason why we were subject to whatever the influence of the Erev Rab was, only because we still had some level of impurity in ourselves as a result of being idolaters in Egypt. Despite all that we saw the miracles. We had the Anei HaKovod. We saw the Egyptians being drowned and destroyed in the Yam Suf. We came to Morah, it was turned into sweet water from bitter water. We saw many things. It still was not sufficient. We were not fully purged as we could have been purged, and therefore ultimately we had the setback with the Chet Egel. So this is Vaish Shalach. Woe to me, I had to send them out, because if I would have kept them there longer, in terms of the punishment, they deserve punishment, the Egyptians. But I couldn't punish them more, which they deserved, because it would have been at the expense of Klal Yisrael, which is the objective. They should leave, go to Sinai. They would have never been qualified to go to Sinai. That's how Rabbi Salevi explains the pasuk. Vaish Shalach. Woe to me that I sent them out, because if I could have kept them there longer, I would have given them more makos. Okay? But factually, 10 had to be given. There were 10 plagues. Hashem worked it out that it's not he sent them out after 9 plagues. He could have given the plagues over a 6-week period. Each plague was a month. Over this 10-month period, all 10 plagues were given. Now, again, but why the 10? And we've mentioned many times the Rabbeinu Bachya says that what is the profile of existence? The profile of existence always manifests itself in 10. Asara Ma'amoros Nivra Olam. God created the world through 10 utterances. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, what is the ultimate objective of creation? The ultimate objective of creation is what? Is Kabbalas Torah. We should go to Sinai and receive the Torah. That is the objective. Everything which has relevance to bring us to that point, which is the purpose of existence, is 10. So the profile of existence, everything manifests itself in 10. 10 utterances, because ultimately there's a Seres Dibros. What is the prerequisite to be able to be in a position to be qualified to receive it? There were 10 plagues. Aser Nisyonos Nisa Kodesh Baruch Hu Avram. There were 10 tests. What determined whether Avram Avinu was qualified to be the founding patriarch of Klal Yisrael? He had to meet 10 of those challenges. When he met those 10 challenges, then he was established as the founding patriarch of Klal Yisrael. He was the founding of. So therefore, 10 had to happen. Because 10 is Kabbalas Torah, that's 10. The Aseres Dibros encompass the Torah in its entirety. So therefore, Hashem says, 10 I had to give, but if I could have given more, which I couldn't because the Jews at that point were holding at the Memte Shari Tumah, the 49th level of impurity, therefore they had to leave at this point. So woe to me that I sent them out.
Rabbi?
How does that work? I'm sorry. How does that work then with the 10? I don't understand. How does that guy with the 10 utterances and 10 plagues and 10 challenges?
The
it
10,
needed 10.
The 10 utterances. That Hashem chose 10 utterances, because that is the ultimate profile of the objective of creation. What is the purpose of creation? Aseres Dibros. That's Kabbalas Torah. The 10 Commandments. That is the objective. So the profile, the whole expression initially was to ultimately to bring that to fruition, to actualize that, which is the 10. So everything that was needed to bring us to that point manifests itself in 10. Avram being qualified and established as the founding of Klal Yisrael, which is ultimately the nation, which is the only qualified nation to receive the Torah. The founding father had to go through 10 challenges. That's Aser Nisyonos for that reason.
Then why wouldn't 10 plagues be enough? And that's where I'm.
No. Again, I'm explaining. We needed minimally 10. I said, well, HaKadosh worked it out. As much as we had to leave, but 10 we had to get in under the wire. Right? What we could have left, HaKadosh Baruch could have dragged that out over 9. We could have had 9 plagues. 10, I'm saying, 10 had to be the minimum. If it would have been more, it wouldn't have been a problem. Wouldn't have been a problem. But over here, 10 was not sufficient. But never even wasn't sufficient, but that had to happen. 10 we needed. That's the point. Okay? I pointed out when Avram sent Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzchak, it says he took 10 camels of his master's camels. The Torah tells how many camels. I asked the question then. Why is the number so important for us to know? He took 10 camels. If he taken 15 camels or 5 camels, to us it would have been the same. Why is it 10? Because again, the objective of that mission was to find the matriarch for the patriarch. Because if she's not the right woman, there's not going to be a Klal Yisrael. See, the objective of that mission was to establish a Klal Yisrael to be qualified to receive the Torah at Sinai. So everything manifests itself, always assumes the profile of 10 for that reason, to emphasize this point.
Rabbi,
Yes, Jay.
so when we say woe, meaning, so is the woe on
Hashem is saying, whoa.
I understand, but is the focus on the fact that we were at the 49th level of Tuma, and as Rav explained, we really need more purging. In other words, that's why we need more. So is that the woe that we unfortunately were leaving too soon from our perspective?
Correct.
That the Egyptians didn't get the brunt?
No. Hashem can punish the Egyptians the way he wants to punish them.
So it was all the Bnei Yisrael.
Right. We were the ones who actually did not have the full benefit of the plagues that we could have benefited. If there would have been more, we would have benefited to a greater degree. Okay? So Rashi says, why did he take us along the Philistine route? Ki korafu. V'noach loshu v'osed derech l'Mitzrayim. And we could have easily returned to Egypt. When will we return? Because we'll be discouraged. Because ultimately we'll be attacked by the Amalekites. If we would have gone the normal route, the straight route, we would have gone back. Here we find even he took us a circuitous route. They said, let us appoint a leader and let us return. If he would have taken us on the straight route, no question we would have gone back. So I want to ask the question. When we said Nitnu Rosh V'Noshuva, the various times, what happened? Immediately they saw the hand of Hashem and they were punished. So what difference does it make if it would have been the circuitous route or the straight route? It says if we had been confronted, we would have gone back. Now, when we were attacked by Amalek, this is pre-Sinai. Once we already were taken by Hashem, that relationship is an eternal relationship. If we fail, we'll be punished. If we were taken on the circuitous route, we said, let us appoint a leader and go back. So if we would have gone the straight one, definitely we would have gone back. So therefore, Amalek, we were confronted before Sinai. If we would have said before Sinai, we're going back, because we would have been overwhelmingly frightened, said, what do we need it for? It would have been a problem. It's interesting, just to understand it. We read at the end of last week's Parsha that although they didn't have provisions, this is the 20%, this is the ones who wanted to leave Egypt, they left into a desert. And Hashem says, Zechariah Navi says, I will always remember the chesed of the youth. You went into an unplanted desert and you had that faith. Although you had no provisions, you went into the desert. And we read even this parsha. Hashem told them, travel back towards the enemy. They were fleeing. He says, travel back. And this whole thing was a ploy that Paro should believe that the Jews were locked into the desert, and therefore they were traveling the wrong direction. And what did they say? We have faith in Ben Amram. There's nothing to worry about, because Hashem's with us. Even though they were confronted. Here the enemy's pursuing them. The first time they had a little bit of a problem was when they were caught between the sea and the Egyptians. And they started to complain. In this week's parsha, are there a lack of graves in Egypt? And that brought about a certain degree of midas adin, as we will discuss. The attitude of justice. How do you talk after all you've seen? Is that the way to talk? Or the lack of graves? So there, they saw no way out. When a person is feeling his muscle, so to say, you're not worried about anything. You're leaving with glory. They're pursuing you. Ultimately, it'll be good. Now, when they were pursuing us and we traveled the other direction, it says there was a cloud separating them from us. And they were shooting arrows and catapulting boulders at us. It never penetrated that cloud. The cloud separated us from the Egyptians. To a degree, we weren't even aware that we were being pursued. Because the Egyptians, it was dark, we were light. We did not see what was on the other side of that cloud. When did we finally realize who was at our tail, so to say? Only when we ended up at the Red Sea. When we ended up at the Red Sea, we realized now we have a problem. The sea hasn't split for us, and we're between a rock and a hard place over here. What do? They began complaining. That was a lack of faith, and therefore they had to demonstrate, as we'll discuss, the Or Chaim HaKadosh points out, that when the Midas Adin is in place, it's not enough to pray. Because you have to demonstrate at that moment the level of sacrifice, and only then that quells the prosecution against Klal Yisrael. Okay? So, Amalek, what happened when we were attacked by Amalek? Amalek, as we said, was pre-Sinai. Amalek. We weren't yet taken. If we come with a complaint there, it would have been a problem. It would have been a problem. But yet, even by the Yam Suf was also pre-Sinai. It was pre-Sinai. And that's a circuitous route.
Rabbi, I'm just, if we confronted Amalek, weren't we?
We didn't. They confronted us. They attacked us.
Wasn't Hashem concerned if we're supposed to go on the circuitous route? Wasn't Hashem concerned that we'd run back when Amalek confronted us? Why weren't we concerned about that?
So he's saying over here because it was a circuitous route. Therefore, that's what we didn't say we're not coming back. We didn't say there. It wasn't that serious. Instead,
no.
When the Jews thought it was over, you have a war, we're going back. You still have a route of escape. What about you stuck in the desert? And therefore, over there, he said, we're going back. Here he took the circuitous route, and we were confronted with Mechemes Amalek. Right? They would have gone back, but they didn't say we're going back. At that time, they didn't say we're going back. That we attacked, we fought the war. Immediately, some Yeshua, we fought it, and we defeated Amalek.
Right, but if the reason was that we're supposed to go into the circuitous route because when we confront enemies, we run back to Egypt, why were
we didn't say that. We did not say Nitna Rosh. We did not say we're going back. We did not. I'm saying then. If we would have said we're going back, it would have been a problem before Egypt. God punished us. And why didn't we say it then? Because it was too complicated. It was too complicated. But what about there? We didn't see it was all over. The times we said we're going back, where God condemned us, you're going to die in the desert. Then we said Nitna Rosh, then we're going back. Amalek was a problem. But if we had the problem then, which is pre-Sinai, we would have gone back. Could you imagine? We're holding almost literally at the foot of Sinai. We're attacked by Amalek. That we travel from Refidim to Sinai, Midbar Sinai. Right before we arrived at Midbar Sinai, we're attacked by Amalek. If we would have been taken the straight route, it wouldn't have happened. Because we would have want to go back. And God would have stopped us from going back. Because I'm saying it's pre-Sinai. If you're fleeing from my Torah, you're not getting it. So God doesn't want to put us in a position that we're going back. Post-Sinai, once you're the Jewish people, you can't go back. Once a Jew says, I'm abdicating my Judaism, you can't abdicate the throne. Once you're a Jew. You follow what I'm saying? Pre-Sinai, if we would have said we're going back, there wouldn't have been a Sinai. So God took us the circuitous route. We fought the war. and we never said we're going back. So we dealt with it, and we went to Sinai. Post Sinai, what happened post Sinai? Once we're a people, if we say we're going back, we're going to be punished. But as much as we're going to be punished, we're still what? We're still a Jewish people.
Where do we see any mention of Amalek?
No, not here, not here, not here. Later, there's Amalek. Pre-Sinai, there was Amalek. Right? After we had the water, after Moshe struck the rock, and he gave us, we had the man, we had both. Then again, we said, we right before he struck the rock for the water, we said, is God in our midst or not in our midst? Right? That's what happened. And that's when we were attacked by Amalek. But that was before we became a Jewish people. If we would have said then, you know something, we're going back to Egypt. That means God's about to give you a gift, which you should embrace. You're going back to Egypt, we're not getting the gift. But why did we say let's go back? It's too complicated to go back. And it wasn't equivalent. Once later when we said Nidl Rosh L'Shuva, although there was a circuitous route, it didn't make a difference. Once you're a Jewish people, you're a Jewish people. And God will not allow us to go back. And there were consequences. They died. If they wanted to go back, they died at that point. Okay.